שקלים ח' ב'. Okay. Parashat Shekalim, 8th chapter, 2nd Mishnah. We're talking about purity and impurity. If you remember, we started in the first Mishnah talking about purity and impurity in the time of the regel, not in the time of the regel, and now we're continuing. So, ביאור משנה ב', כל הכלים הנמצאים בירושלים, all the vessels, you found the vessel in ירושלים, דרך ירידה לבית הטבילה, if you found it on the way down to the mikveh. So you've been to mikvahs before. So the mikvahs today, a lot of them are, you go in and you come out on the same way. But the mikvahs in the old times, most of them, that's right, it was one way. It was one way, you go in one side, you go out the other side. Or you go in one side and you go out the other side, like this. Yeah, so this is the rule. If דרך ירידה לבית הטבילה, if you found the vessels on the way to the mikveh, אם נמצאו בדרך שיורדים בה לבית הטבילה, טמאים, then you assume that these vessels are tameh, they're impure, you're not allowed to use them. בחזקת טמאים הם, they have a חזקה of being impure. בדרך עלייה, but if you found them on the way up from the mikveh, in other words, on the one way going away from the mikveh, ואם נמצאו בדרך שעולים בה בבית הטבילה, but you found them on the way up from the mikveh, טהורים, בחזקת טהורים הם, you're going to assume that they are pure, and therefore you're allowed to use them for all the necessities of purity and impurity. What happens? שלא בדרך ירידתן עלייתן. Why is it? It explains the reasoning why. Because the mikvahs at that time, they didn't have the going down the same way as going up. שלא באותה דרך שמורידים את הכלים לבית הטבילה, because not on the same way that you put in the vessels into the mikveh, מעלים אותם משם, you would bring it up from the mikveh. כלומר, which means, שהיו עולים עם הכלים לאחר טבילתם בדרך אחרת, that after they dipped the vessels, they would come out in a different way. Why would they do such a thing? Because it's a lot of people. And if you're going to go up the same way, the impure people, before they're going to touch your vessels again, so what's the use? You had to go. See, today we don't care. So, because there's no purity and impurity. In the old time, you would care. So every mikveh was one way. You couldn't have a two-way mikveh. Because otherwise the people who are impure will touch it on the way down.
It wasn't a mikveh for vessels.
That's right.
For people.
כדי שלא ייגעו הטמאים בטהורים, so that the unpure people are not going to touch the pure people. הילקח כלים שנמצאו בדרך ירידה טמאים, therefore vessels that are on the way down to the mikveh they're tameh, שבוודאי נפלו מידי המביאם לטבילה, that for sure they fell from those who brought them to be dipped. וכלים שנמצאו בדרך עלייה טהורים, and the vessels that you found on the way up, they're pure, שבוודאי הוטבלו, because obviously they already were in the mikveh. ויש גורסים שלא יקרה ירידתם עלייתם, ומפרש הרמב"ם, and the Rambam explains, שלפי מצב הכלי בשעה שמוצאים אותו אפשר להבחין. It says, according to the situation of the vessel at the time that you find it, you can distinguish אם נפעל בשעת ירידתו לטבילה או בשעת עלייתו מהטבילה. I don't know exactly what the Rambam means, but our way of understanding is good enough. Up to here is דברי רבי מאיר. This is all the words of רבי מאיר. במסכת פסחים, in מסכת פסחים רבי מאיר says, מבואר שלדעת רבי מאיר, according to רבי מאיר, דווקא בדרך ירידת טמאים, specifically on the way down to the mikveh they're impure, אבל בכל העיר טהורים. But if you find it in ירושלים anywhere, not close to the mikveh, then it is pure. It's only vessels on the way to the mikveh that you will assume that are impure, because obviously somebody is taking it to the mikveh. But if you don't find it in the way of the mikveh, you find it in the street, you assume all vessels in Yerushalayim are always pure. Why? שלא גזרו על ספק כלים, because the sages did not make a decree on vessels that have doubt. It's true that you don't know if it's pure or not pure, but the sages said you can assume they have chazaka of all vessels in Yerushalayim that are pure, like we said, because most of the people in Yerushalayim eat throughout the year, they eat holies. So everybody assumes that everybody keeps all the vessels always holy in Yerushalayim. But if it's on the way to the mikveh, then you'll have to worry, because there's a reason why the guy is taking it to the mikveh. That's according to Rabbi Meir. Okay? Rabbi Yossi says, Kulam tehorin. Rabbi Yossi disagrees with Rabbi Meir. He says they're all pure. Kol hakelim shenimtzu b'Yerushalayim. It says all the vessels that you can find in Yerushalayim, afilu b'derech yerida lebet hatvila. Even when you go down into the mikveh, tehorim hem. Why? Shelo gazru al safek kelim b'Yerushalayim. Because again, there was no decree on doubt of vessels in Yerushalayim, כדרך שגזרו בערים אחרות, just like you made the decree in other cities. In other words, according to Rabbi Yossi, don't make a distinction, going to the mikveh, not going to the mikveh. Plain rule, one rule. All vessels, all Yerushalayim are always pure. That's it. Chutz, yes, a doubt. Which one do not? חוץ מן הסל והמגרפה והמריצה המיוחדים לקברות. Except all these vessels that people use to bury dead people. So this we discussed before. I know it's a strange habit. Today we don't have it. But in the old times, they would bury a person twice. They would bury once the person in a cave. They would put him in a cave until he decomposed. And then they will retake him and bury him again. The bones, exactly. It's called Yom Lekitat Atzomot, the day of gathering of the bones. Today we don't do it, but in the old times that's the way they used to do it. נוהגים היו בימיהם לקבור את המת תחילה בקבר ארעי. In that time, the custom was to bury the dead beginning not in a permanent grave, in a temporary grave. ולאחר זמן היו מעבירים, and after a while they would transfer את עצמות המת לקברות אבותיו, the bones to the burial of his forefathers. לשם זה היו משתמשים בסל מיוחד. And to do that, they would use a specific basket. שהיו מלקטים לתוכו את העצמות, and they would put into that basket all the bones. ובמגרפה שהיו גורפים בה את העצמות. And with a rake, that they used to rake all the bones, כשהן מפוזרות, when they were used to be scattered. ובמריצה, and in מריצה, it's not the מריצה we use today. What's a מריצה? היינו מכשיר ברזל, it was like a piece of metal, שראשו חד, that it had a pointy head, והיה עשוי לרוצץ ולנפץ בו אבנים הדרושות לקברות. I think it was like an izmil שלנו. And they used to break the bones with it, to make it small, so they can put all the bones into the basket. מבואר שהיא מריצה, מבואר שהיא מריצה את האבן לקברות. It says, why do you call it meritza? Because it runs the dead person to the burial. הרב מברטנורה מפרש באופן אחר, ברטנורה explains in another manner, עיין תפארת ישראל, או כתפארת ישראל, שתמל פירוש ברטנורה, that he doesn't like the explanation of the ברטנורה. ואם נמצאו כלים אלו, nevertheless, according to Rabbi Yossi, only if these vessels were found, אפילו בירושלים, even in ירושלים, הואיל ומיוחדים לקברות, since these are used for burial, הרי הם בחזקת טומאה. They are you're going to assume that they are impure. But the halacha is not, and the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi.
Which not makes sense.
You don't like. Rabbi Yossi says, no decree, no decree. That's it. I don't care. The way to the mikveh, not the way to the mikveh.
You go down to the mikveh, you see a vessel.
It's pure. That's it. All vessels in Yerushalayim are pure.